All right, everybody, take a deep sigh of relief. The Celtics are back on the track here. We've got the Celtics with a 2-1 lead after domination in game 3 down in Miami. Can they get going in game 4? We're going to look into that next. Coming up here on Green with Envy. You guys know the deal. It's a Sunday edition. Let's lock in. What up, what up, what up? Welcome into another edition of Green with Envy. As always, is your boy Will Weir checking in. How you doing? How you living? Hopefully you're riding high after that Saturday beat down from the Boston Celtics. Joining me to discuss what happened in the bounce back game that we were all in desperate need of is my best friend, co-host, and the coach of our podcast, the one and only with the Asian swoop today. I don't even know what to call this. We got a little swoop going on. I was gonna say it's like
the post shower hair.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you remember back in the day that show? It was on, I think, MTV, Hoover High. Like they had like the Alabama.
I remember the show.
Had,
I never really watched it though.
Yeah, I mean that's not important. The important part was they all had this thing that I would always call like the Alabama swoop. It's like these Southern kids that all have the same swoop. Until now, where you've got like the messy emo look going on.
Yeah,
you had like
I'll go messy emo the rest of the pod.
Yeah, I wasn't really sure what to do with it. I was like, this is not the Alabama swoop, it's the Asian swoop. It's the I don't know what we had going on with it, but it's a Sunday morning here in Austin, Texas. You got me and Greg here in the building. It's a pretty gloomy day out here, but couldn't be more opposite down in South Beach. Greg, I got to be honest, really needed that beat down yesterday. And it sounds like from all of the comments the Celtics made that loss definitely was a bitter pill to swallow for 48 hours or so.
Yeah, and I think some of the comments in the post-game pod really spoke to how their mindset, that was a word that came up a lot in the post-game yesterday, was their mindset just wasn't locked in. And I think that's natural after the announcement comes that Jimmy Butler's out for the entire series, and the Celtics just probably assume they're going to be able to just cruise to victory, which is a very human reaction to their best player on the other team being out. But they talked about how, I think it was Jalen who said that they needed to respect the Heat as NBA players, and they couldn't just give them open shots because they are NBA players, and NBA players are talented enough to knock down open shots when they are dared to shoot. And that was a big thing that they talked about in the post game yesterday, was they didn't want to have any dare shots in this game. One thing that I think really speaks to that is if you just look at Caleb Martin in game 3, 2 for 4 from the field. The Celtics were just like, we're going to cover him today instead of not covering him, which is the big difference between game 2 and game 3.
And we're going to attack him and make him do splits in the middle of the court.
Ooh, that was nice. Made him touch
I've been loving that that screenshot going around. But yeah, it certainly felt like a different Celtic team. And so, just setting the scene for everybody here, game 3, Celtics win 104-84. And to be honest, it wasn't even really as close as 20 points. Like it didn't even really feel like that. It really felt like it was more of a 20-30 point game. And the Celtics led the entire way through. There were 0 lead changes. This was not one of those games where it felt like there was a little bit of Miami's hanging around. Once we got past just both teams shooting brick city in the first quarter, after that point, I think the Celtics dropped 40 plus points in the second quarter. That was when it was just kind of over. And, to your point, the Celtics really came out with a different mindset. Now, I do want to add this. This team is different, but we're going to struggle with this all postseason, so get used to it. This team is different, but then when we saw what we saw in game 2, of course, it brings us back to some of the DNA that we've seen in past seasons. One thing that has been consistent with this main Celtic core, the Jays, Al, Derek, they're both in their third tour back here, with the Celtics. So I'm considering them that part of the core. Peyton Pritchard's been involved in the last 3 postseasons. That core always responds to adversity, right? Joe Mazzulla loves it. He loves the adversity. He's a big fan of it. But the Celtics have been very consistent in bouncing back in games just like this. So we'll get to game 4 and what I think they need to do, there. But in this game, you could tell that, as you were saying, their mentality, the way that they approached it with how they defended Caleb Martin, how they defended in general. And actually, I want to pull this clip up here to get us started. For me, the very first possession of the game, is what told me, and this isn't always the case, but in this case, it held true. Told me exactly what I needed to know about where this team was defensively. So let's look. This is the very first possession for Miami on offense of the game.
Continue to file into the Kaseya Center. Jovic gets up the first shot, missed it. There's Tatum with a rebound.
Greg, you're the coach of the pod. Tell me what you saw right there, because to me, when I saw that, I was like, okay, we're fucking locked in right now.
Well, look at the clip that I uploaded right below that. What does that say?
Oh, there we go. Okay, I didn't realize you uploaded the same clip as I did. All right, well, we're on the same page then.
Yeah, I uploaded the exact same clip because I wanted to see how the Celtics would respond in game 3. And in game 2, they tried to do a lot of the same stuff that we just watched in that play in the second half. It's just by that time the Heat had already found their rhythm, and Tyler Hero was cooking the entire game. He had 14 assists in game 2. He had 2 assists in game 3, 4 turnovers in game 3. So he had a 1-to-2 assist to turnover ratio in game 3, which wasn't great. But if you just, I'm going to play that clip one more time. And for those of you that are watching on YouTube, I just want you to watch as Tyler Hero is coming off the screen and just look at the rotations as Hero gets into space, what Jrue Holiday is able to do, sliding up as the gap defender, and the way that Jaylen Brown is able to contest the shot from Jovic.
Continue to file into the Kaseya Center. Jovic gets up the first shot, missed it. There's Tatum with a rebound.
And then obviously on the backside, Tatum gobbling up the rebound as he did. I think he had 11 boards.
11 rebounds.
He was amazing last night in the game. But Holiday's willingness to just like be up and taking away that the pick and roll ball handler and Hero coming off that screen, where in game 2 he had a lot of space to just step up into easy walk-in threes, which I think he hit like 2 or 3 of those off pick and roll in game 2. And Holiday was just there, right? Taking that away. Jaylen was ready with the next rotation, and the Heat rushed that shot. Who knows if Jovic makes the pass to the baseline to the guy who cut off the baseline, maybe that triggers a open layup in the game. It's a completely different feel. But the Celtics pressure on that play, I think, is what stood out to me. They were game plan discipline with Jrue Holiday coming up as the gap defender. And also just from the jump, you saw Holiday contesting the first Jaquez pass off to the wing.
That was going to be what I was going to add in there. That was at the very beginning, because, I don't think he quite got a hand on it, but this is to the point that we made last episode, contesting passes, not just contesting shots, which is still one of my favorite things that we talked about. And this is what Miami was doing to Boston last game, was contesting everything. And so they just never had that. There was no part of that was clean for Miami, right? There was no part of that was easy. And especially when you look at the talent gap, if you take away, because these are still NBA players, to the point that you said earlier, like these are still NBA players. They get comfortable, they can get cooking. That's just how it works in the NBA when you're at this level of talent. If all these guys to some degree have to be irrationally confident to get to where they're at. So when they get comfortable, and we see this all the time in FIBA, right? There's a reason that Dennis Schroeder is maybe a top 5, 8, international player, but here he's a fringe starter role player on a new 2-3 year deal every couple of years, right? Like there's reasons to this. And so, I think on that possession, it just spoke a lot to not letting Miami get settled in. And much like we talk about on offense with like multiple actions, this was kind of the defensive version of that, because you had switching, you had high hands, you had the gap help, you had so many different things that were happening that, are just going to make that talent gap too far for the Heat to be able to overcome if you never let them get comfortable. So I think that was just an unbelievable possession to set the tone.
And I want to show a clip here from game 2, which was a very similar possession. It was actually on the other side of the court, so going to the left side. And Caleb Martin's the one who ends up getting the exact same look that Jovic did. But for the people that are watching on YouTube, I just want you to watch Kristaps Porzingis in the way that he dares Caleb Martin to shoot here versus how Jaylen Brown contested the shot from the clip we just played.
2 great three-point shooters, Hero and Robinson, need to be at the top of their game tonight. Here is Martin. Didn't give him a lot of time to boo. I mean, it was barely in his hands right there, and he knocks down another Miami triple.
So if you watch that, this is to Joe Mazzulla's post game where he said we didn't really change anything schematically, right? It's the same rotation. Jaylen Brown comes up, takes away Tyler Hero's ability to walk into a three. Hero makes the correct pass to the wing, and Kristaps Porzingis is playing 2 versus Jaylen Brown playing 2, and it's Caleb Martin and I think it was Highsmith in the corner, and Porzingis decides to kind of stunt at Caleb Martin, but that doesn't contest, and Caleb Martin gets a wide open 3 off of the wing and Porzingis decides to stay with Highsmith in the corner. But you have to make that next rotation. If you don't make that next rotation, you're just daring somebody to shoot, giving them all the momentum in the world to develop a rhythm. And that's what the Heat did in game 2 that they were unable to do in game 3. And one stat that really stands out is just 3-point attempts in game 3 versus game 2. The Heat shot only 28 3-pointers in game 3, and I think it was either 42 or 43 in game 2, right? So the Celtics were definitely locked in, and they understood they could not lose the math game against the Heat because that's really the Heat's only opportunity to win.
That's another part of that talent gap, right? Like it's the only way to shrink it there is with math, right? And so if you don't let them get the shots up, they can't shrink that gap. And you know what? While we're just talking about the 3-point line, something else that I really love about this particular game. So the Celtics only shot 11 of 37 from the 3-point line. So they actually shot a worse percentage than the Heat in this game. They actually made one less 3-point field goal in this game than they did game 2. And so what I love about that for this team is that I still feel like there's this narrative the Celtics can only win when they're lights out from 3. It's just not the case anymore. Now, we've been saying this, I think, for a while on this show, and that there's a bunch of different ways the Celtics have won games this season and have still blown out teams. Like, it's not that they're only blowing teams out when they shoot lights out from 3. So seeing this team shoot 11 of 37, which I'm sure they'd probably like to shoot a few more threes than that. But honestly, because this is where the versatility plays into their favor, that they can play in different styles. You know, they can win while going 11 of 37, shooting under 30% from 3. Like, this team is different in that sense. When we talk about the differences between this team and teams of years past, is that this team to me is even though the narrative is out there that they're so reliant on the threes, I don't believe that's the case night to night. Sure, and in perfect world, they are going to take and make a lot of threes, but I think there's other ways that you're going to see them win games throughout this postseason run, and I think this is an example of it right here, just by the math numbers.
Yeah, and Jaylen, to that point, Jaylen had 18 points in the paint last night. I think in the other 2 buckets that he had, because I don't think he hit a 3-pointer last night. The other 2 buckets that he had were right on the edge. I actually have his shot chart pulled up right here, so you can see all of Jaylen Brown's buckets right there, all right by the basket. A lot of them on Tyler Hero. He had that one great putback in the first quarter, but then he had an elbow jumper and then a jumper from the baseline. 0 for 4 from 3, but he was dominant in the paint, and that's where Jaylen Brown. You know, we saw in the postseason last year, his shot kind of abandoned him. And then he had turnovers whenever he was trying to get to the basket. But now the Celtics are putting him in good positions. He's developed enough of a post game where he can dominate in the paint with 18 points in the paint. It's really impressive from JB.
Yeah, JB was great last night. I mean, there wasn't really much to poke around with things that I do have one thing I'll point out here in just a second, but the offensive rebounding, I think, was also huge. That was something going into the series that we were curious to see how that would play out. Some of the rebounding, and the Celtics were just all over, especially in the first half, all over the offensive glass. You know, I think especially back to that Derek White flurry towards the end of the second quarter. You get the and one from Jaylen Brown. He misses the free throw. Derek White comes flying in, gets the rebound. You know, really kind of symbolized the game. All right, but the one thing that I do want to bring up here before we start to look ahead to game 4, Jrue Holiday, 3 points, 1 of 5 last night, 6 assists. We highlighted his defense in the very beginning, so I'm not obviously trying to point to, you know, that he's not contributing, but we've heard of, you know, the Jrue Holiday ups and downs that come along offensively, and so far in the series, he's averaging 6 points a game. So, you know, we got to look ahead. We got to start to keep our eyes on things. 6 points from Jrue Holiday on not great. I don't have his full shooting numbers here, but I know I can tell you it's not great. His field goal percentage, not great so far in this series.
He's missing bunnies at the rim.
Yeah, and any concerns on that front? Because I don't think it will matter because of the talent deficit long term. Hopefully the Celtics don't take this to 6. We hope it goes 5, but ultimately, I don't think there's a way in which Miami pulls this off completely. But as you get deeper into the playoffs, there's going to be games like game 2 where, hey, Holiday, this could have been a time where we needed you to be that third scorer, right? And you just weren't. And so it might not matter as much this series, but I think long term there could be series where it matters. So I'm just curious, has this popped up on your radar? Any concerns with the Jrue Holiday offensive output so far? Only 3 games.
A little bit. It's just like it seems to be a little mental with his inability to finish around the rim. He's like in game 1, he just missed like badly on some kind of easy shots that he would normally
hit.
hit.
Ball, I think, in one of his first shots in game 1, I think when he was like right at the basket.
Yeah. And then last night, he just like short armed, like alligator armed, another layup opportunity, I think against Hero. Maybe it was against Patty Mills. So it was something. No, that he had that one play against Patty Mills where he had him on the block, and he could have just. So he was on the left block, right? He's backing him down into the paint. We've seen Jrue Holiday all season either shoot a little floater going to the middle, or he does like to fade away. But what he'll do is he'll spin baseline, kind of like up fake, step through, and finish at the rim. And he decided to fade away on Patty Mills and try and shoot the ball over the corner of the backboard. And in that moment, it's like, man, like Jrue, you have Patty Mills on you. Go to the rack and like finish at the rim. But I think with Jrue, his role in this series and throughout the playoffs is going to be the defensive stopper, right? He's locked in on Tyler Hero. If we play the Knicks in the Eastern Conference Finals, it'll be Jalen Brunson. Next round, if we play the Cleveland Cavaliers, it'll probably be Donovan Mitchell, right? He's going to have all those matchups. So I'm cool with Jrue Holiday sacrificing even more on the offensive end, as long as we don't forget to look for him at the 3-point line. He hasn't had many 3-point opportunities from the corner. He had one that he airballed in game 1. Last night, I think there was a 3-point opportunity that he hit, but it was like right as a dead ball whistle happened. But usage rate, I talked about this for games 1 and game 2. It's just something I'm tracking throughout the playoffs. So last night's usage rate, remember we talked about how Derek White had an 11% usage rate in game 2. Usage rates last night, Jaylen Brown 30.9, Jason Tatum 24.7, Kristaps 20.3, Derek White 21.5, Jrue Holiday 9.7. Right. So I think I'm okay with Jrue Holiday having less of a usage rate and being less involved on the offensive side, as long as he's bringing it on defense and those touches are being distributed to a Derek White, because we can't have Derek White with 11% usage rate in a game. Like, he's too important to this team. So I want to see Derek White's usage rate above 20 every single game in this postseason. We've seen it 2 out of 3 so far. Both of those are victories.
Yeah, and to that Derek White point, you could hear it. If you're listening to the national broadcast, you could hear them talking about that same point. Like, they cannot forget Derek White. Derek White is, anytime he's involved, whatever the action is, if Derek White's involved, usually those numbers are better than whatever the opposite of that would be. So, I'm with you. I'm not concerned yet. It's just something I'm keeping my eye on here as we go forward. Because and I've said this a bunch of times in the regular season, I think there's going to be at least a game or two where you're going to need a 20-25 point Jrue Holiday game that maybe you weren't expecting. And it might not be this series, but it's just something that, if that confidence isn't there or he's a little in between, it makes that opportunity to happen a little bit more suspect. So just something to keep an eye on. I don't think it's anything.
Question to you, though. Thinking back to the Bucks championship against the Suns, what are the 2 plays? Well, I have 2 plays that stand out for me Jrue Holiday made in that series. What are the 2 plays for you?
So one of them's the alley-oop that he should have never thrown to Giannis, which turned into one of the most incredible highlights. I'm trying to think on that run. You're talking about just in the finals, I guess, or
just in the finals. I'll just throw it out there. So he big strip on Devin Booker in the closeout game, right? Devin Booker had an opportunity. I think he was driving either towards the middle or towards his left, and Jrue Holiday stripped him in a very big moment that pretty much sealed the victory for them. And that's where Jrue Holiday is going to make his mark with the Celtics. It's going to be on the defensive side of the ball. So I'm not worried about Jrue's offense. It'll be an issue if teams just completely ignore him, but until they still respect him on the offensive side of the ball, it's not going to be an issue.
Yeah. So just something to keep an eye on. We'll see how that plays out, but Celtics up 2-1 on the Heat heading into game 4, which is going to be Monday night in Miami. And Greg, this is where, so I mentioned earlier, a staple of the core, if you will, of this team has been they're very resilient. They bounce back to adversity. They have games that flop and you scratch your head like, how did we do this? And then they come back and they respond with a game like Game 3. We've seen that script before, right? The key is now, all right, you guys had your one game where, all right, Jimmy's gone. We're gonna loosen up a little bit. Now in Game 4, and this is probably going to be a very boring podcast topic because it's probably the same as what Missoula and Kristaps and Jalen have been saying, is they're just going to stick to the same script and they just need to come, with the correct intention. I used that word last episode. Come with the correct intention, and there shouldn't be a way for Miami to beat this team. Do you see anything else? Like, is there any other analysis to bring to this? Because the Celtics don't really need to change much up. It's just they need to play with energy. They need to play with intention and with the right mindset. And it's the talent alone makes this almost impossible for Miami.
Jason Tatum had a great quote after the game where he says, "Everyone knows how talented we are. Can we be the tougher, harder playing team? Combine that with our talent, it's going to be hard to beat us. Can we start every game punching first?" That's it. That's it with the Celtics. Are they going to be locked in from the very first possession? 2 out of 3 games, they've been locked in from the very first possession, and they won both of those games. So I really don't think it's much more than that. We can dive into a little deeper here, though, just in terms of some matchup stuff that I was finding from games 2 versus game 3. So before we get into the matchup stuff, I think turnovers is something that the Celtics really need to focus on, which I think is a mindset thing if they're just focused. 12 turnovers in game 2, 4 in the fourth quarter. Do you know how many turnovers they had last night?
Celtics only had 5 turnovers last night.
5 turnovers the entire game last night.
Including just for the record, from the Jays, 1 turnover combined.
Beautiful stuff. So that's probably the first thing to continue to look for moving forward on the offensive side of the ball. Can they take the Heat's pressure and deal with it? And I think Peyton Pritchard, we haven't talked about him yet. He was great in last night's game on both sides of the ball. I think his ball pressure on Tyler Hero was a game changer, and he started talking some shit to Tyler Hero when Hero got that.
Talk about a difference between game 2 and game 3 with Peyton Pritchard. Like, like I said, I was amazed in game 2. Like, Peyton Pritchard has never played 20 minutes in his life anywhere and not shot the ball. Right? Like, that's just never happened. Peyton Pritchard has been a scorer his entire life. Like, this dude gets in fuego. And so to have that game and then to have this where, like you said, he's getting a little chippy. He was back getting in the paint, got back to some of those had that nice offensive putback where he started flexing to the bench early on in I think it might have been the late first quarter or early second quarter. Like Peyton Pritchard, like I said, we didn't really touch on him, but 7 points, 3 rebounds. Like he was he was that game changer that JJ Redick was talking about, right? That energy shifter that not every team has, but Peyton Pritchard, that is one of, in addition to his spacing and ball handling, that's the other element that Peyton Pritchard brings.
Yeah, he was great, man. And I think the screen navigation versus Hero is such an important piece because he's one of the better screen navigators on the team. He really doesn't get hung up on screens. And that's what we talked about earlier with Hero, just being able to get into space off of those moving screens from Adebayo. I don't know if you saw this, but there was this one moment they had called a foul. I think maybe it was on Tatum, but they were at the free throw line and the hot mic picked up Jaylen Brown yelling at the referee. And he was just yelling about Bam Adebayo screening and like moving screen. He was like, "You got to be set on the screens. He's not set on the screens." They were just yelling at the referee, which is great because that's such a Bam Adebayo thing to do. But I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the matchups. So Bam obviously was huge in game 2. Very efficient, 5 for 8 versus Porzingis and Al in game 2. In game 3, he was 4 for 12 against Porzingis and Al. And I think game 3, one thing that I really noticed was that the Celtics were not falling for any Bam Adebayo up fakes, especially Porzingis. I thought he did a great job staying down. He didn't let Bam get his shoulder into his body and then fade off of it. He was kind of enveloping him in like a very Wemby-like way. Which
there's a possession in the third quarter that's reminding me where Bam kind of does back Kristaps almost under the basket, but to your point, he has that very Wemby like planted, like, dude, I'm still 7'3". And if I just stand as much ground as I can and go straight up, like Bam kept pump faking to try to get just a little movement from Kristaps, and he just would not give it to him. And eventually, even though Bam was literally under the basket, put up a shot and missed it. And I think that was a great representation of exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, and that's also game plan discipline right there, because that's something the Celtics probably looked at in tape and they said we can't fall for any of their up fakes. And I think Porzingis did a great job not falling for up fakes last night. Go ahead. Yes,
No, I'm just laughing because you would think after this being the fourth time in 5 years, because there's no Jimmy Butler right now, but just think back to all the other series. How many Jimmy Butler pump fakes between Jimmy and Bam? I would hate to see a compilation of how many pump fakes the two of them have had over the last 4 or 5 seasons against the Celtics. So when you said it was like, yeah, it's a game plan, let's not biting their pump fakes, it's like, man, I really wish we had implemented this in the previous 4 seasons as well.
Right. So some other things to look at just in terms of like how the Celtics made adjustments from game 2 to game 3 and what can translate into game 4. It seems like they were definitely hero hunting in game 2, right? They were 7 for 23 against hero in game 2. Only 4 less attempts against hero last night, 7 for 19 against hero. But I do think that those 4 attempts were probably distributed in a way that didn't feel like we were hero hunting as much. It definitely felt like it came much more within the flow of the offense to go at him versus just like isolating on one side of the court and hoping that we can just score on him because we want to put him in action, right? Game 2, they were 5 for 8 versus Caleb Martin. So that's really good numbers and efficiency. But to me, that speaks to them allowing Caleb Martin to kind of dictate the terms on the defensive side of the ball. I personally think we should be going at Caleb Martin all the time. He pressures up at half court. Him and Highsmith just pressure. Like they're really good at being handsy and physical up all the way to half court, those high pickup points. But Celtics were 11 for 17 against Caleb Martin in game 3, which kind of spoke to, they need to attack his pressure. And I think they did that really well in game 3. And then in game 3, they were 1 for 6 against Bam. They were 6 for 9 in game 2, which to me is a little bit of fool's gold. You don't want to go at Bam Adebayo. There's all these other guys.
Pretty easy rule.
Yeah, don't go at Bam. So only 6 attempts against Bam in game 3 I thought were great. We went at Jovic 15 times. I'm really impressed with Jovic. I think Jovic is looking really
Jovic is good, man. I watched a little bit of the Heat towards the end of the season. He was giving me a little bit of anxiety because I think he's him. I've been high on Jaquez all season. Jovic, I think this is now Jovic's second season.
I think so.
And yeah, I think the two of them going forward, when you combine that, if they had like a healthy Jimmy, like I see the vision of this team. I see them being a really tough team. Like I like that combination of the two of them, and Jovic especially is a guy that's got a little something extra to him as well.
Yeah, I think most of it's in his nose. And then one last
shots fired.
One last matchup thing. The thing is ridiculous, man. It looks like a prosthetic. One last matchup thing. I didn't give you the numbers. Bam versus Kristaps. He was 3 for 10 against Kristaps in game 3. 3 for 10.
Yeah, I'm just looking here, man. I know you were just kind of going through it out loud, but just looking at the shot distribution of who the Celtics went at it, like it's like you said, it's so jarring that there's 6 attempts against Bam and then double digits against everybody else. 13 against Highsmith. Funny, 13 against Highsmith and only 13 minutes of defensive action. 19 against Hero, 17 against Martin, 15 against Jovic, 14 against Jaquez. So yeah, a pretty reasonable plan here. Let's avoid the defensive player of the year candidate and go at everybody else. That seems like a pretty solid game plan from Joe Mazzulla and the staff. So game 4, Celtics, plain and simple, they need to come out the same way they did in game 3, and they need to put this series to bed. This is where, all right, one game can happen to anybody in any series. We saw the Nuggets didn't close out the Lakers last night, right?
Yep.
So it can happen to anybody, anywhere. But if you're a really serious team, you're putting this team away in 5 games. You're taking care of business Monday night in Miami, and then you're going home. And God help me, stop fucking losing games at TD Garden. You close the shit out in game 5. That is that is the recipe for the Celtics here to get everybody back to the point where I think this is the team that they are, that this is a different team. If they can close this out over these next 2 games, I'm back to feeling just as good as I did before game 1. I'm not very far away from that right now, to be fair. But I think that would really help just from a mindset standpoint as we head towards the next round, just knowing that, okay, last year the series probably goes 6 when it shouldn't. It went 5 this year. Lost 1 game to the math, let our guard down. That can happen in any series, and then you kind of move on. So I think the Celtics are in a good spot. Game 4 will tell us a lot. Miami's going to play with a lot of desperation. It's going to be potentially their last home game. So got to be ready to respond. And I'm sure Spo's going to have a trick or two up his sleeve. We'll see what that is. But it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. So we'll check back in. I think for that one, we'll probably do a podcast right after the game. So we should have something up on your feed by late Monday night, if not first thing Tuesday morning. So be on the lookout for that. Same with the YouTube page as well. Before we get out of here, Greg, let's take a quick look around the NBA, quick update on other series going on. The series that is most important, at least to the Celtics for the next round, Cleveland-Orlando, now tied up at 2 games apiece. This series has honestly been such a rock fight. I have not tuned into a ton of it, just to be transparent. Any thoughts that you have on this? Yeah, out of all the series, it's easily, unfortunately, the most boring series.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like, I know I should watch it because the winner's going to play the Celtics, but at the same time, I just don't want to watch any of it, and I have to, like, pick and choose which games I actually have. I don't have time to watch every single series, and part of me is like, I kind of just want to have fun watching these playoffs. Like, I'll lock in with the Celtics. I'll definitely lock in, the last 3 games here, Cavs and Magic. I'll probably tune into a little bit more, but the first 4 games, let them be what they are, and then we'll kind of figure it out. Because I was kind of expecting the Cavs to just run through the Magic, to be honest with you, and now that the Magic have evened the series and blew out the Cavs in games 3 and game 4, I'm going to lock in a little bit more to games 5, 6, and 7. So I'll have more thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat, and like I don't know. At first, I was, because Cleveland was just limping into the playoffs. Orlando was at least had a little bit of momentum until they kind of fell the last week of the season. But go ahead.
So this is for everybody listening. This is how, like, not locked in I've been on that series. The only time I've watched that, I've put on the Spanish broadcast just so that I can, like, learn some Spanish.
Try to get a little, like, residual Spanish learning. Yeah, exactly.
That's where I'm at with that series.
No, I had it on in my living room while I was in my backyard doing yard work yesterday, and I could, like, kind of see it. I think I checked the score maybe twice. Like, I didn't see a single play. Like, I didn't know what was happening. And by the time I came in, it was time for the next series. So yeah, we'll have to lock in more on that. It seems like Paolo was doing a lot of heavy lifting, and then Franz, I looked at the box score, Franz came through in a big way in game 4. So we'll see how that plays out. We'll have more thoughts on that as we get closer to the Celtics, hopefully figuring out who they're going to play in that series. Let's stick in the East here for a minute. Let's go to the 2 games that are happening later today. So we're recording this on Sunday morning. Today we're going to get game 4, Knicks Sixers. This series has been unbelievable, just high drama every single game. Last game, just an Embiid roller coaster ride, puts up 50 points on basically, one leg, just knockdown shooting, but also had maybe the dirtiest run of plays that no one's talked about, and I just don't fucking get it. Like, never mind the kick in the nuts. I still, to this couple days later, have not been able to get over the fact that he tried to pull down another player while in the air, and everyone has just kind of seemingly, other than like Knicks fans, kind of brushed past it. It's one of the dirtiest plays I've seen.
Yeah, and then he had that illegal screen on OG Anunoby where he just, like, stuck his butt out into him in the 4th quarter in, like, a big moment where if that's called an offensive foul, because it absolutely was an offensive foul, then I think the Knicks get the ball down like 5 or down 7, with a lot of momentum on their side. So, I'm not a big fan of Embiid, dude, to be honest with you, man. I don't like him. I would hate to root for him. I think he's a foul baiter. Like, obviously he's super talented. He scored 50 points and, like, can do whatever the heck he wants. He's fighting through another injury. He's fighting through Bell's palsy. Like, all that stuff is really impressive, but I just don't fucking like the guy, man. Everything that he does, I'm just like, I don't like the way that you go about the game. I don't like the way that you interact with the refs. I don't like the way that you make excuses for yourself constantly.
Dude,
just not my guy.
Interacting with the refs, the way that this motherfucker stomps around, and I was thinking about this. How many times? So if you're watching on YouTube, you're going to be able to see how many times has Jason Tatum gotten teed up for this?
Oh yeah,
for the forget about it, like wave away. There's got to be at least 5 or 6 technicals on Tatum for that this year. How does Embiid get to stomp both of his feet, throw his hands in the air, scream at a ref, and not get, like, how is that not a technical? But as you're walking away, going like whatever or forget about it, like
yeah.
I just don't get how
Unless Tatum
Embiid.
is just like saying some ruthless shit as
I
he's
mean,
walking
I was
away.
gonna say that is the caveat, unless he's like, it looks innocent, but instead he's saying, stuff that I can't even, like, fathom right now.
Yeah.
He could be talking shit about. He could be going full Kelly Oubre. You see when Kelly Oubre a couple weeks ago just was talking about the refs after the game.
Yeah.
So if he's doing that, maybe that's a different story. But I don't get how Embiid consistently escapes all of these criticisms. Like, it just blows my mind. And like I said, that dirty play with Mitchell Robinson has just sat with me. Like, I want, like, kind of to your point with like Cleveland, Orlando, I should be locked in. And with this series, I am locked in, and I should be wanting it to go 7 so that both of these teams just wear each other out. After that play, I was on my couch 100% a Knicks fan. I just was like, F the Sixers, get them out of here. I don't want these guys to have any type of good feeling. I want them off my TV screen. I want Joel Embiid locked up. Like, they need to be done with. And I was completely a Knicks fan, of course. The Sixers end up pulling it off, but that's going to be intriguing as a game 4. It feels like a series that I'm kind of hoping we get 7 games out of now, just for the drama that it's bringing. And then let's go to the final Eastern Conference series here, Milwaukee, Indiana. Just a strange but entertaining ending to their game 3, in which Indiana pulled away at the very end in overtime here to take a 2-1 series lead, despite Chris Middleton nearly hitting 3 basically buzzer beater shots in a row. Dame gets hurt. Looks like, I don't know. We don't know what his status is as of right now, but either way, he's going to be extremely limited with some type of an Achilles injury. So likely no Dame, no Giannis. Middleton, who balled out in game 3, but is on a bad ankle.
Yeah,
he was questionable. It was a bad ankle. It's not looking great for the Bucks right now, Greg.
No, the Bucks are toast, man. I was tweeting out during the game. I was like, the Bucks absolutely need this game. I didn't think that they would be able to win the series if they lost game 3, especially when it went into overtime. And I saw Dame get hurt, and I feel like a lot of people just like didn't notice it in real time. And he was
I was texting you. Remember, I texted our group. I was like, okay, is it just me, or like has Dame not touched the ball in overtime? Like, I don't understand. Like, I know Middleton's cooking a little bit, but I was like, you probably should let Dame touch the ball.
Yeah, and I kind of picked up on it because I saw him come out and he was like kind of flexing his foot. And in my head, I was like, he's out there just being a decoy for his team. And then in the post game, that's what he said in the post game. And I just don't think they can win a game 3 with, great analysis, but without Dame and Giannis, and with Chris Middleton hobbled. Like, what are they going to do? It's got to be the Bobby Portis show. And we've seen him have big games before, but the Pacers are probably the better team at this point, man. And it's probably going to be a Pacers team in the second round, where a lot of people weren't expecting it. But now that the injuries are just hitting the Bucks to the degree that they are, I can't see them winning the game, dude. I really can't.
Yeah, I can't either, man. It's a tough road ahead. It would be a real miracle for them to pull out that game 4. So we'll have to see. If they lose that game 4, it's just completely, 3-1. Giannis, even if Giannis and Dame hobble back, I don't think that's going to be, because I think Indiana could have got a couple games, even if this was full strength on full strength. Yeah. So just a different match, especially with Pascal Siakam in there, who's had a great series. I think that's a big game changer. I think Indiana's probably still missing another shooter. Maybe this is where they're kind of feeling the Buddy, like missing. They actually missed Buddy Hield, who's been a no-show for the Sixers,
right?
But they're kind of missing that a little bit of extra shooting. But Indiana, they're interesting here long term. I think for this series they're going to get by. We'll see what they do in round 2. But real quick, Greg, any thoughts on the West series here? Not really a lot of drama. OKC up 3-0, Denver up 3-1, Lakers barely stay alive. Minnesota, Anthony Edwards just telling all of Phoenix to suck it multiple times. Just incredible stuff from Anthony Edwards. And then
I think he did 4 times in a row.
Dude, he just kept going. Like the first time, because I didn't watch that game was late the other night, and I was like, I gotta go to bed. So I didn't end up watching. I watched the highlights, and I saw that clip. And at first, sometimes they set it up so that like a clip just goes right back to the beginning and keeps playing over. That's what I thought it was at first. I was like, no, he just did it like 4 or 5 times.
Yeah, it's a 5-second video.
Yeah. It's incredible. He's been unbelievable. But yeah, any thoughts on any of the West series? Clippers, Dallas. That's probably the one with the most intrigue.
I thought the Lakers and Nuggets series has been really competitive, man. I think that should be 2-2 right now, and it's 3-1 Nuggets. The Lakers blew that 20-point lead. They've had double-digit leads, and I think every single game they've won most of the quarters in the series, and they just can't beat the Nuggets in the fourth quarter. Like in the third and fourth quarter, the Nuggets just win those quarters and win the game. So I've actually been really tuned into that because I'm like, I feel like the Lakers are like on the same level as the Nuggets, and then the Nuggets always have that moment.
It's just the wrong matchup. Like they're a good team. It's just the wrong. Like this is, and
Anthony
I don't know
Davis
how
awesome, dude. This is like the best I think I've ever seen Anthony Davis play. And last night was the first night where he got the best of Jokic. He like outplayed. I mean, numbers wise, you'd probably argue that Jokic still got him, but Davis had a 20-20 game last night.
Yeah, I mean, Jokic is gonna put up numbers every single night. Doesn't matter. Even nights he loses, he puts up numbers. Like that just kind of is what it is. But yeah, I mean, for the Lakers, it's just, I mean, this is to the point of like, would have been risky as hell, but ducking that smoke and trying to get into the 8 seed here would have been a world of difference, because it's just, you guys might be the second best team in the West, maybe.
Yeah, you might be, especially with Davis playing the way he's playing, man. And it's one of those things where like, I'm not rooting for the Lakers, but I don't want the Nuggets to be this inevitable team. Right, I want them to show signs of more.
By the way, it's so funny how inevitable is just attached to the Nuggets. There's no way to talk about them without saying it. Whether it's us, whether it's the low post, whether it's like, no matter what you listen to, inevitable has become the word that is just instantly, it's word association with the Nuggets. Nuggets inevitable, Jokic inevitable. That's everywhere you go. It's the only word that can describe them right now. And I think it's kind of funny that it's just every single person has that same association.
It's just a feeling. And I want the Nuggets to show mortality so that if we do play them in the finals, right? I think the T-Wolves will have a lot to say about that in round 2.
Yeah.
But I want them to show that they have to grind for it. And it's not just going to be, it's the fourth quarter now, time for us to win. I want them to have to really get it out the mud so that by the time they get to the finals, if we see them, we see that there are a lot of more points of emphasis that we can exploit versus now where it's, as you said, it just feels inevitable. Whereas I said, and you commented on,
as everyone says,
feels inevitable. Yeah. But that's like the running thought that I have in my brain as I'm watching all those games.
Yeah, I think for the Nuggets, it's just don't make it. Don't make their path easy, right? Like, I'm glad that the Lakers are beyond just playing a competitive sweep. They're at least they won a game, right? Like, it had been 12 straight games that they had lost, or 13 straight games, whatever it was. And so, now for them to get one, let's keep the series going, right? Like, let's get them a little banged and bruised, like, because everyone's going to take their lumps, including the Celtics. So let's not make it too easy for them to get to the finals. But yeah, the West playing out pretty much chalk right now, except for that, we'll see what happens. Clippers, Dallas, that's going to be a game coming up later today as we're recording. So we'll check back in on that, but that's going to do it for this episode here of Green with Envy. As we talked about, Celtics game 4 against the Miami Heat coming up Monday. We'll hit you with a podcast right after that game to give you our thoughts, as well as get you set up for game 5 and what could potentially be a closeout game back at the TD Garden. Greg, always a pleasure. Any final thoughts you got here before we send this out with some Black Sheep Optimists?
No final thoughts.
All right, here it is. Black Sheep Optimist. Catch you guys later. Peace.
Every time I get this high, I lose my mind. It don't take much no more until I hit the floor. Every time I get this high, it's you I find. It don't take much no more until I'm at your door. You cut me to my core, baby. What can I say?
say. You got me on the floor, you know I came to play. I know I shouldn't, but you seem to take my pain away. And every time I score, Jason Tatum fade away. I close my eyes and